9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we should be live. Hello to anybody who may or may not be here. We've got a live chat up, so it says we should be.
Yep, we're alive.
But it might have made a duplicate. Oh, nope, there we go. It didn't make a duplicate this time. Sweet. Alright, hey guys, welcome to the Sticks and Stonehenge live stream. I had a bit of a rough morning, so not quite as much coming from me this time around, but we actually have nearly the full crew. Via had a prior engagement, so it's Cingeto, Wolf, Calon, and I, and we're going to be talking about pluralism in the pagan community. Hello, Rilla. And Frith and Grith between various traditions within the pagan community, because this is something that I think is at least somewhat unique to us as opposed to the monotheist Abrahamic religions. We tend to get along better with each other than any of the Christian denominations, for example, do between themselves. And I thought it would be interesting, and the group thought it would be interesting to talk about why. So with that, I will hand it off to you guys. Since Wolf, I think this was your and Callan's topic, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we kind of discussed it a little bit earlier today. We've got a group chat, and we were throwing some ideas around, and we both agreed that this is a good and important conversation to have, no matter your faith tradition at all, but specifically for pagans, trying to build bridges between other pagan groups and also non-pagans, both in the atheist community, the anti-theist community, and the Christian community as well. Any of the Abrahamic faiths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Though I'd say the Abrahamic faiths have some beliefs, particularly Christians, I would say more so, tend to have some beliefs that make it a bit difficult to have that grith.
I agree.
Yeah,
but that's why I think that we need to work so hard at it. That's my main personal focus in life, is to build as many bridges as I possibly can. Paganism deserves to be validated, and the best way to do that is to show people that we're not evil witchcraft people like they think we are.
Wait, I'm not?
Evil?
Calon.
What? Wait, witchcraft and evil do not, line up in my brain.
Wait, well, hold up. Ulfer, you're saying I'm not evil?
For now. I'm keeping a close eye on you.
Yeah, so...
Hey, Angelica. Hey, Witchy Boo.
Building Grith is always a good thing. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. There are certain groups that we will not be building Grith with, such as Folkists, for example.
Yeah, there's been a bunch of stuff going on that front, too. We'll get into that at some point.
Yes, at some point, but tonight it's about Grith, Frith, and friendship.
Well, and I think it would be good, even though Ocean did a fantastic video on the topic, it would probably be really good for you two to kind of get in a little bit to what Grith and Frith mean and how that applies to, heathenry and also to, relationships between heathens and other pagan groups.
So, Frith means, you know stabby stabby me, I know stabby stabby you. Which, in a higher way, means... you don't attack me, you don't, insult me, harm me physically, or do anything of that nature, and I don't do the same thing to you. Grith is temporary frith. It is frith that is applied when you have stabbed me, and I don't want to stab you back, so I offer to meet you under a shield of Grith. Ulfer, anything to chime in?
No, I pretty much agree with you. Sorry, I was I was spamming us across the Discord community, but yes, Frith is basically a handshake between people. It is usually built the definition that Ocean puts forward in his Frith and Grith video, I really appreciate the most. And if you haven't seen that video and you're just stumbling in here for the first time, please go watch that video. I'll be sure to drop a link to it here in a moment, or if somebody else can do it for me, that'd be great. But the newest Frith and Grith video from Ocean Keltoy defines Frith and Grith, where Grith is between groups or inside a group. Like in olden days, a king would invite maybe feuding clans or tribes to his hold, and no matter the attitude before you entered the king's Grith circle, even if you killed the other guy's brother and he's there to kill you or wants to kill you, under the king's law, if you entered that area, you could not. You were supposed to be respectful of each other, no matter your hard feelings. Respect, not so much kind, but at least decent respect.
To break Griff is to invite Neath upon you, and to invite Neath is to make you a Neithinger.
Yes.
And our tradition, it's the worst thing that you could be. It's right down there with.
Yep. And so Frith is Grith is usually seen as temporary. You would settle whatever needed to be settled, and then the Grith would end when you left the space. Now you can have Grith that lasts for a very long time, but it's usually just within the group, and it doesn't extend past that. And then it is understood that the Grith is temporary, not permanent, even if it does last a long time. Whereas Frith is usually seen as a permanent handshake between two parties. You can have Frith between friends. You can have Frith between, co-workers, stuff like that, where you have a little bit. It's basically like, a really good friendship that you have honor and respect for. And Frith can be built from Grith, and I think that's a great thing, that you can eventually build a permanent or mostly permanent solution to building these friendships and maintaining respect. So yeah.
Well, and there was a similar concept in Athens when when there was a foreign dignitary that would come to Athens. What would often be done is the ambassadors would come before like a large council and state their case in front of the council and the people. And if a vote of the people declared that they wanted that alliance, then it would be so. And afterwards there would be feasts and sacrifices and stuff performed in the honor of Estia. And if anybody harmed the dignitaries either before or during these festivals and things, it was considered to be an affront to the gods.
Right.
So there was a similar concept specifically in Athens. Like, you can't talk about Greece as a monolith because the culture was too diverse.
Wait, so you didn't kick the foreign dignitaries into pits like the Spartans did?
Generally, no. Not unless they did something absolutely fucking horrible, as far as I understood. But, so coming back, I guess, to the main topic, would you guys like to talk about sort of pluralism and how Frith and Grith applies to pluralism within the pagan community?
Sure. I'm going to let Calon start with that one.
So, when it comes to pluralism, the idea is basically we have all these faiths around, and these faiths tend to work for us. I mean, some of us are more superstitious than others. But when it all comes down to it, in terms of a healthy faith, we can all agree to disagree because, well, we don't, unless we have, like, evidence to the contrary. So, like, for example, if someone comes to me and says that Inanna is a mother goddess, I might take some issue with that because all the sources on Inanna do not have her in that role. In fact, that role would be rather odd for her to have. She's a goddess of sex, war, and power. Motherhood doesn't exactly fit into that. But it's still possible.
I just realized that I didn't give Cingeto a chance to chime in if he wanted to with any like parallels in the Druidic / Celtic religions.
I honestly I've not found any direct parallels that I can find. The closest thing I know of would be that I know the Druids were directly responsible for trying to uphold peace between warring tribes and could even walk between warring tribes and stop them in the midst of war, as it would be sacrilegious to attack a Druid. That's honestly the only thing I can think of that would parallel towards it. There's pluralism, but nothing specifically to do with Frith or Grith, to my knowledge.
Okay. So a quick question from the chat for Wolf and Calon. I'm going to try to take this in the most charitable position I can. Iron Charioteer appears to be asking about whether or not Frith and Grith were simply cultural concepts or if they had ties to religion, and if so, like, what function you felt they performed within that society.
Okay. When it comes to Frith and Grith, the concepts themselves are pretty intuitive. Like, when you look across how most human societies tended to, at least at first, organize, they would organize around a unit, like a family unit. And within this unit, there had to be some sort of cooperation. There is no cooperation. Well, humans as solitary animals doesn't go over well. So, if by cultural, you mean it's like a product of cultural evolution, then I suppose you could see it that way.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Calon. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
As for Grith, that can also be seen as a process of cultural evolution. As for them being tied to the gods, I tend to view the gods in terms of like in Frith and Grith in similar ways. Some gods have Frith, others with other gods, others don't. Like maybe Thor and Odin, or similar with familial ties. However, Thor and Thiazi have no Grith or Frith. So, if that counts as a religious interpretation of Grith and Frith, then so be it. But the concepts themselves need not carry religious connotations.
So Iron clarified just a little bit more and said not cultural concepts, evolutionary, natural selection results. So I would agree, yes, that they probably did come from natural selection, or at least the drive to stay alive. You had to be able to make peace, even with your enemies, to make sure that, you know, you didn't kill each other to the point of, you know, extinguishing your entire family line, or, you know, killing off the entire tribe or village, putting them in a situation where too many people would die and they wouldn't be able to survive the winter. So they had to be able to come up with a system where they could shake hands and be able to put their differences aside long enough to figure out, how can we compromise this so that we don't kill each other? Because if you just keep fighting, eventually, you know, there's not going to be anything left.
I think actually a great example of Grith actually comes from the Athenians when they united to fight against the Persians. Everyone understood that once the Persian wars were over, they would be right back to slaughtering each other. But for the moment,
right,
that was Grith.
Well, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, Iron Charioteer, so if you have any more of those types of questions, like, please save them till towards the end and try to keep your questions on topic. We're talking more about the way that the pagan community interacts with each other and with other communities than we are specifically about the way that ancient cultures behaved and where those origins might be. Is that fair, guys, do you think?
Sure, and I didn't mind answering Iron's question because I feel like it's pertinent to go ahead and get some of these definitions and concepts out of the way first so that people understand exactly what it is we're talking about.
Well, he's asking further about the origins of how it could be just empathy and evolution and things of that nature. So I feel like we're going to get off topic if we keep going too deep down that road.
Sure, yeah. I'll go ahead and answer that question very quickly with a simple yes. I believe that it's empathy and evolution and the fight to survive. I'm going to go ahead and read...
I was just going to say to Charioteer, keep in mind the three of us, as far as I understand it, like me and Calon and Wolf are not divine command theorists. We don't necessarily think that the gods gave us our morality per se.
No. Olfer, imagine Odin's morality.
No, I won't do that. I won't do that to people. I won't imagine that. I'm going to go ahead and read Ocean's definition of Frith. It is a mutual agreement to avoid causing each other physical, emotional, or mental harm and to avoid negatively affecting each other's honor, worth, and luck. And luck is a very serious Norse concept.
It's also a very complex concept.
Yeah.
Like, I just finished reading a 25-page research article on it from an academic journal. So, yeah.
So, coming back to the way that Frith and Grith sort of relates to the way that the pagan community interacts, I guess let's handle the way we tend to interact with each other first, since kind of like this is a, discussion from a pagan perspective. Why do you guys think it is that, say, either one of you could have a conversation with me or Cingeto and coming from completely different, like radically different worldviews in terms of religion and come out being, good friends versus, say, a Baptist getting into a discussion with a Jehovah's Witness?
Well, Cingeto, I don't know why he hangs around me. Like, we disagree on every point, but anyhow, jokes aside. So, for me, it has to do with a more open, like, spirituality. Like, I'm not going to, since I'm a polytheist, I don't have the pressure, I don't have to disprove Cingeto's gods. In fact, I can accept, and I do accept, that they exist. For example. I might have some disagreements, but because of Frith and whatnot.
Right. With Christianity, their biggest hang-up is their exclusivity. I mean, they've got a million hang-ups. But when it comes to bonding with other people in the room who don't believe like they do, their biggest problem is exclusivity. If you're not with us, you're against us. Also, I'm going to try to make you with us. That's how they operate. That's how every step, every handshake, every smile, let me invite you out to lunch. Hey, come hang out. I want to go invite you to this fun thing.
Or even more serious
in the community.
Or even more seriously, like on Naka's channel, we talked a little bit, or he talked a little bit about like Christian charity and, you have to go to a Bible study if you're going to get any help as a homeless person. Like how that's sort of towards that end. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Wolf. Sorry.
But yeah. So every little move that they make like that has to do with trying to bring you into the fold. Even the most, even the best Christians I've ever known, that they would like to see you in their camp, no matter what. And some of them mean it in the best way possible. They really believe that they're trying to just save your soul. And they believe that they're doing the right thing by trying to convert you to their line of thinking. I have a hard time blaming them for that because that's the way that they were raised and raised and raised and raised so many generations back. It's really hard to break that indoctrination. You know, so when they meet somebody in the room who does not believe like they do, they immediately put walls up and they become defensive. If they, and usually in most Christian conversations that I have with all of my many different friends, as soon as they find out that I don't worship God, and that even if I will admit to them, I believe your God exists, and I always clarify, I just don't think he exists like you think he does. So if he does exist, he definitely doesn't exist like you think he does because of these reasons, and we can go into that if you want to, but I'm not trying to insult you, and I believe my gods exist like this. And so usually they then try to ask me a billion questions to, you know, play the gotcha game. They try to lead you down the line of, oh, I gotcha, and try to convert you over to their side. That's honestly the main reason Christianity can't do that. They can't build interfaith bridges, honestly, because they are always trying to dishonestly convert you no matter what.
That has been my experience as well. And for me, that's what makes it awkward, is the fact that, like, I know what they think they're trying to do is good, but at the same point, it's also a bit monstrous too. Like, I literally had a person sit across from me on a bench and ask me, well, why do you think it's awkward that I think that you are going to burn in hell for eternity? And to me, he said it in such a tone that I know that he wasn't like being dishonest. Like, he was sincere. And it's like, how do I even start to like untangle this huge mess here of why advocating for and accepting a spiritual holocaust, in essence, it's somehow I'm somehow not supposed to take that as awkward.
Well,
right.
I mean, the version of what Wolf said, as far as Christian belief, that I often say is, you know, I believe your God is probably real, but I think he's a dick and not everything written about him is true. But, like, the hell belief in particular, I think, is a major barrier towards Frith, because it creates a, you know, and this may be lefty-sounding language, but there's a reason that I'm using this. It creates a sort of hierarchy automatically, where those who believe in a certain thing are automatically better in some way than those who do not. And as humble as someone can be on the face, there's this assumption when talking to a Christian who has hell belief, which some don't, that because they believe in Christ, that they're saved and better off than you are. And there's always a little bit of privileging there. Would you guys disagree?
Right.
Well, that's definitely privileging, especially
definitely agree.
With our society.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, you see a church on every street corner where I am.
So, I guess coming back to discussions between, you know, pagan faiths and such, why do you think it is, in terms of, like, exclusivity versus not, why do you think that the pagan community has this ability to come together the way that we do? Like, for example, we've talked many, many times, we even have mildly different beliefs on the way that the afterlife works, and yet we can have these civil conversations and not end up screaming at each other that we're going to go to some terrible section of said afterlife by the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, because we also, it's like, well, there's also like this general thing where we don't view like the afterlife necessarily as inherently a reward either. It's the place you go when you die, and if you weren't, so to speak, bad enough, then nothing's really going to happen to you. If that makes sense.
I know extremely little about Hellenist faith. I'm going to go ahead and just be super honest, and I've admitted this many times before. I've never once pretended to know enough about the subject to cover it, but I do know a lot about Norse stuff, and when it comes to the Norse afterlife, the thing that we kind of have going for us is, and the reason we don't care so much about afterlife is it doesn't matter what you believe, asterisk, it matters how you die. And usually everybody just goes to Helheim, which is supposed to be this beautiful place, very much like an uncivilized Earth, with rolling green hills and fruitful trees, fertile farmland, where your entire family line, all the way back, is there waiting for you to receive you after Hel, the goddess of death, walks you down the path into Helheim, and your family's sitting there waiting on you. I'm talking entire family lineage is waiting for you and welcomes you with open arms and leads you to your new homestead, where you will then live out basically eternity, and live with your family. And it's supposed to be great.
So,
Yep. That's the perspective from the Gesta Danorum, which I also hold.
Right. And so,
are there any heathens that hold to the Hel in Snorri Sturluson's?
Probably. To ask, are there any heathens who think a certain thing? Yeah, most likely.
Yeah,
But the great thing is, that's not a problem. They're allowed to think that. We don't
care.
That's the biggest thing that everybody seems to agree on with pagans is we don't proselytize. We don't try to convert you to I don't care what you think. I don't care that Calon also believes in the Norse. Calon's also a heathen. Calon can think however she wants to think about her view of the afterlife, and it will not matter at all to me, because the way she believes does not impact the way I believe, and the way I believe isn't going to impact where I end up. I can want to go to Valhalla as badly as I ever want to, which I don't. I think it's a shit place if it even exists. But I'll never get to Valhalla unless I die in combat. And I could do an entire video series talking about whether or not certain people get to go to Valhalla. And I would probably upset a lot of people with some of my opinions. But
I've heard a few of
them. Believing in Valhalla does not get you to Valhalla. It is not Norse heaven, and only people who die in combat get to go there. I will not go to Valhalla. I hope I don't. I hope I don't end up in combat, and then I hope I don't die in combat. I hope I die, and I hope I go to Helheim. Hell. Go to hell.
The old sources just call it Hell.
Yep.
So there is a little bit of a judgment component to the Hellenic afterlife. Much like many other ancient religions, the Hellenic afterlife is complicated, and depending on what era and what writer you're looking from, it works a little bit differently. The version of it that I'm the most familiar with has sort of like 3 or 4 components, depending on whether you consider the Paradise Isles to be a part of Elysium or not.
Right.
But there's a concept of virtue, virtue being the way one conducts themselves. Virtue is debated among philosophers as to whether it refers, like with the Stoics, virtue is like acting in accordance with reason. To the hedonist, virtue is pursuing pleasure, without harming other folks. Nearly everybody agrees that deliberately harming other people is not virtuous, that it's like vice-like. I'm closer to between an Aristotelian and a Stoic. Aristotle says that there's a happy medium for every individual person between any positive trait and any virtue and any vice, and like the actual proper virtue, or the virtue is the center between 2 vices, basically, is what he thinks. But the people who are so virtuous that they become heroes, like people that are venerated by their ancestors for, like centuries to come, they get to go to the Paradise Isles, which is a particular, like, amazing, basically you get to hang out with the gods if you go there. Elysium is for people who lived very, very virtuous lives, but were otherwise mostly unremarkable. The rest, the I'm trying to remember what the actual name of the fields are, but there's this vast field area where the vast majority of people who die go. These are the people who aren't absolutely horrendous, but they weren't really amazing either in terms of their behavior. This is just the average person. Basically, they all get to kind of go there and hang out. It's not particularly amazing there either. You don't have the verdant rolling hills or anything, but you also don't necessarily have any sort of like burning. And then for the people who were just absolutely atrocious human beings, they went around hurting people, they, like they were self-righteous and complete and utter assholes, they actually get stuck in the river where they get run over by the boat all the time. So that's the closest to a punishment system you would see, but it doesn't really have to do with your belief so much as how you conduct yourself towards other people. So
Right.
again, you're not going to get stuck in the river because you don't worship the Greek gods. You're going to get stuck in the river because you decided to take a piss on, your neighbor's doorstep and run off repeatedly over the course of 30 years or something. You know what I mean?
30 years, gosh.
That came from a newspaper article I read
I know.
recently.
Oh, really? Was it in Florida?
I think so. But anyway,
Knew it.
but like basically how you treat other people is kind of what determines where you go rather than some sort of piety or particular belief. Cingeto, would you like to chime in?
Sure. About the afterlife of the Celtic religions. Generally, it goes similar to that of Hinduism, with a bit of distinctions. It's generally just reincarnation, but it works more like along the lines of you live in this world, and then you die, and then you transfer into the next life, into the other world, and then you die in that in the form of another worldly creature or such, and then you die there, and then you live another life in this world, and it kind of repeats along that. And there's other metaphysical things that I speculate on, but they're a bit controversial, so I may not want to disclose them right now.
Okay. So, coming back to, I guess, our initial topic, unless anybody else has anything else you guys want to say about the afterlife. So, the fact that we don't have this sort of exclusivity tradition in terms of the afterlife, but also to a certain degree in terms of our gods, would you say the vast majority of pagans that you've met either have some conceptualization that all the gods exist, or if they're soft polytheists, it doesn't really matter whether they do or not anyway, because the result of praying to any individual god is the same?
I don't think I've met it.
Well, I'm talking about for
pagan...
soft polytheists, specifically with
Right.
that comment.
I don't think I've met a single pagan, either soft or any other version, who believes that that they believe that these gods exist, but these don't, or this god, doesn't exist, or whatever. You can make arguments that I believe that this god doesn't exist like this because of this historical context, and it's been modernized that the god does exist in our times now.
Or
But,
that the god is a particular, say, like a renaming of a different god by another culture via syncretism.
I was trying to articulate that, and I was failing miserably. Thank you. Yes, that. So, but outside of those extremely specific examples, no, I've never run into a pagan that goes, yeah, the Hellenic gods exist, but the Norse definitely don't. What are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, I've
but they're
never
focused.
run into that. Do what?
I have, but they're focused.
Oh, well, sure.
I wish I could say that I haven't, but like Aliakai, I have run into those.
Well, we also need to remember focus aren't people, so...
That's right.
Quick question from Witchy Poo. Soft polytheism, it's a pretty broad topic, but it basically boils down to the belief that the gods are either aspects of a male and female main god, where all of the different gods and goddesses throughout humanity are just facets or personalities of them, or that all of the gods come from this divine source, frequently known as spirit, or like some variation on that, and that the gods are us trying to humanize that when interacting with it. That it does want to have a relationship with us, but that we have to humanize it and filter it through culture in order to interact with it. But that's what soft polytheism means.
Interestingly, I have met a non-folkist who believes in only the Tuatha De Danann, which is interesting to me. I didn't really interact with him that much, but
Wait, does
I've seen him before. Hmm?
does he not believe in the Fomorians?
I think he does with the Fomori too, but I mean, he was
Oh.
specifying the Tuatha De Danann as a general catch-all term for the Celtic gods. But
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he does. It wouldn't make sense if he didn't, but he distinctly only did. He said he didn't care if other people disagree with him. He was fine with it, but he did say that was his only specific belief. So that I thought you might find that interesting.
That's really interesting. So, I guess coming back to pluralism, do we want to give a fairly firm definition for pluralism and sort of get into how that relates to the pagan community?
I'll try. I'll give it a shot. Why not? Pluralism is the acceptance of non-superstitious belief.
I'll be honest. I had to Google it. I'll be honest.
Would you like to expand on that a little bit? Particularly since Ocean did a video on superstition, like it'd be useful to add sort of what superstition means in this context as well.
Superstition refers to that point to where a person is so impacted by their fear of the divine that they cease to be able to function in an everyday context. So if I'm going out and I refuse to go out with, I don't know, without running around my bed 7 or 8 times or something of that nature, and that somehow, and doing a bunch of other various little weird and odd rituals that make it to where I can't really get out of the house, then that would be superstition.
I mean, another example of a harmful superstitious belief would be the Mark of Cain belief that, the Mormon Church had for a long period of time.
That and folkism.
Yeah, folkism itself is superstition.
Yes, completely superstition. A non-superstitious belief is, say, okay, here's actually a better example, actually. I see this a lot with rocks, with people who deal with crystals. A superstitious belief would be, this rock will cure cancer. A non-superstitious belief would be, this rock gives me spiritual energy to help me make it through my treatment.
Or even, doing a ritual or a spell with that particular crystal to help augment the treatment rather than replacing it.
Exactly.
Would you like to expand on that a little bit, Wolf or Cingeto?
I think it summarizes it fairly well.
I pretty much agree with it, yeah.
Would you guys like to give some examples of superstitious beliefs you've seen from Folkists in your guys' traditions?
Folkists? I don't really get as far... When I interact with a Folkist, it's usually trying to suss out why they believe that they're the only ones who can worship in the way that they worship. We don't really dig in, like when I'm having a conversation with a Folkist racist, I'm not usually trying to suss out their spiritual beliefs. I'm trying to suss out, why the fuck are you a racist?
Yeah, I think maybe there's a bit of a difference between the Folkists that you guys deal with and the ones that I've been kind of dealing with alongside other folks in my community, because like the Hellenist focus we've been dealing with will claim that one can, quote, Hellenize themselves regardless of the color of their skin by fully adopting the culture and religious worldview of their specific organization, and that by doing that one becomes Greek, but also that ethnic Greeks decide what those attitudes and things are which gives them ethnic privileging. So I guess maybe there's a bit of a difference there, because like the focus on my side have particular superstitious religious beliefs that define them also. Folks from that organization will frequently say that, for example, the Greek gods rule over all the other gods, if the other gods exist at all, because Platonism.
Yeah,
Right.
I was gonna say I don't usually see that many Gaulish focus or Celtic focus in general. I have a hard time finding them, which is not. I'm not complaining about that. That's a good thing. But generally, the only main things, like common denominators between the Gaulish focus specifically that I can think of, are just they believe you have to be French and French nationalist to be properly Gaulish, and that's all I can think of, really, when it comes to that.
That is really awkward because I would think gravitate towards Catholicism.
I would think so too, but they don't. I don't know why. I might be because I read this paper a while ago about mentalities towards the Franks and towards since the Franks are connected with Catholicism a lot of times. This might explain why. They generally tend to think of the Franks as being the old aristocracy, and at least this is from what I've read about France, the old aristocracy and like the three estates and stuff. And I think of the Gauls as representing a more freer society and things along that line. And that's generally what the Gauls will tend to symbolize in France, from what I've read.
That's odd.
So, coming back to sort of like pluralism and such, so we talked about accepting non-superstitious belief. Would you like to expand a little bit on what that means when it comes to pagan discourse and also interfaith discourse with pagans?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead and start, Calon.
Okay, I'm being put on the spot.
Of course you are. That
Everyone's looking at me.
Much better you than me.
Hey, I think Ulfar has something to say here.
Well, Wolf, I mean, you asked for it.
Next.
Dot, dot, dot. You can hear the dots, like, audibly.
Dee, 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 dee.
So,
Okay, so
in all seriousness.
And on a serious note, when it comes to accepting superstitious belief, that obviously doesn't mean you have to take that belief as your own. But what it means is that you have to, when dealing, for me at least, when dealing with the other person and dealing in sort of their realm, you treat that belief with respect and as if it were real. So like if a person has a sacred stone that they feel gives them energy and nobody can touch it, you don't go and just pick it up. So basically it means not being a dick about the other person's belief.
Yeah, when I'm interacting with other pagans, I just go ahead and assume that whatever it is they're saying is true, at least for them, and we just have a conversation that way. Like when Allie and I are talking about whatever her beliefs are, I'm just like I don't have a lot of knowledge on Zeus or in any of the Hellenic gods except for Persephone. I've looked into her pretty hard, her and Hades both.
You
for
love
personal
the
reasons. My wife's extremely interested in Persephone, and so I'm most likely going to be doing a lot of research for her. And
There's an excellent devotional out there from Bibliotheca Alexandrina, if you don't already have it.
I don't, and if you would like to send me any resources on Persephone, I'm asking for that information. I would
Oh,
like
absolutely. Like after we get off, I'll send you a DM with a link to it. It's a
I
love their devotionals. It's a collection of like short stories, prayers, poems, and a few essays on the gods.
Okay.
But anyway, like interruption aside, I just wanted to verbally say that so that my brain would logic because ADHD.
No, absolutely. But yeah, when I'm speaking with Aliakai about her beliefs, I just automatically assume that whatever she says is true, at least for her, if not for the entire world, and that whatever she says, I take as fact. And so, and again, because if she's wrong, which I doubt she is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether or not something is true. What matters is that it's true for the individual. Because, again, we're not pushing our beliefs on other people, so it doesn't really matter in a sense of we don't have to argue about it. It matters in a respect way. I want to learn everything that Aliakai wants to throw at me. I'll listen all day long. I have no problem with that. But it doesn't matter in the sense of, no, you're wrong because you don't believe like I do.
That reminds me of a quote I actually read in the Time Bound book series. It doesn't matter that I believe you. It matters that I believe you believe you. If that makes sense.
Well, and to me, like, the way that I see it, it seems more likely than not that the gods exist, just because of the number of cultures that have had interactions with them, the just absolute insane number of reports of deity experiences throughout all of history, including in the modern day, and the sheer number of pagans that I've met who were either atheist or agnostic when they had a deity experience that brought them to whatever faith they ultimately became a part of. So, to me, it seems more likely that the gods exist than that they don't. And which specific gods are the ones that exist and which specific gods may not doesn't concern me so much as the particular push that I feel in my own practice towards the gods that I worship. My experiences have led me to believe that a certain set of gods are definitely real, and given that the sheer number of other people that I've met who have had experiences with other gods, some of which they may never have even heard of before they had that experience, it leads me to believe that it's more likely that those other sets of gods exist in some way, shape, or form as well. It doesn't change my faith to know that there may be other gods out there that are not the ones I worship. There's no, as we talked about, there's no afterlife compulsion to make sure that I honor every single god that ever there was. So why would it matter to me if Calon and Wolf and Cingeto are worshipping different gods than I do?
Right. Yeah, that's just... I feel like we're almost talking in circles because we keep bringing up most of the same points. And that really is the point, is that this is how you build these relationships. Is you start respecting the viewpoint of the person that you're trying to at least shake hands with.
Now, I will say that I am a little bit... So, I mean, I am glad that Aliakai has at least learned our language and doesn't just hear bar, bar, bar now.
Bar, 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 bar.
Because that's all we hear from her, technically.
Bar,
Yeah.
Logoi.
Yeah, I've got my bar 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 translator like on my homepage just so I can go ahead and start pulling stuff up whenever Aliakai starts talking to me.
You know what? God's damn it, Calon. I am learning Ancient Greek so that you and I can just troll everybody by having chats in Ancient Greek at some point, randomly.
I'll just leave. I'm not gonna success. I'm not gonna like push that on myself.
Well, Ulfar, you have to deal with me in Ocean server where I'll just end up speaking Old Norse.
See, but that's okay because I'm so familiar with reading it so often. It really trips me up when I hear it because I read it significantly different. I'm bad with pronunciations, so when you type it at me, I know exactly what you're saying most of the time. But when you start saying it out loud, I'm like, fuck, I don't know what she just said.
Okay, so guys, by the way, apparently from the chat, Cingeto, you now have another new art assignment. In addition to Calon your mic, another channel meme is bar, 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 bar.
Bar, 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 bar.
I'll put it on the list.
So coming back to the conversation, though, let's get into the real meat of things. We've talked about why we don't have problems with each other, and why we might have a problem with Christians insofar as they have a problem with us, if that makes sense. Like, it's very hard to interact with most Christians, and I'm putting the most asterisk on there because there are Christians who don't have hell belief, and there are Christians whose beliefs are wide-ranging enough that they don't put the you have to be saved by Christ as a way to go into heaven, and they're very strange Christians as far as the way that doctrine works in their religion, but I'm not going to deny them their faith. You guys mentioned atheists as well.
Atheists? Those exist?
And the way that we can build Frith and Grith with the atheist community, and you also talked about anti-theists. So coming back to sort of these concepts of pluralism and atheism and anti-theism and building bridges and such, how do you think it's best for the pagan community to continue to promote those, and why do you think that's such a good idea?
I'm sorry, Aliakai. I was responding to a message in chat, and I can't type and listen at the same time, and so I did miss what you just said. Can you repeat it, please?
Okay, so the final question after my little preamble was, you mentioned atheists and anti-theists and the importance of building bridges with those communities, as well as attempting to build as much of a bridge as any particular Christian will let us build given hell belief. I'm curious what you think the best way to do that is and why you think it's important.
So
Because you
I
guys know my
actively do
answer.
this. What was that last part?
Oh, I was going to say, anybody who's watched me on Naka's channel knows my answer to this question, so I'll go with last, but I wanted to let you guys sort of expand on that since you're the one who mentioned it.
I actually do this pretty actively in my life. I'm extremely open with my faith. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Discord, I'm on Twitter, and I don't really, I mean, look at me, I don't hide myself. I don't mind being out in the front. If you search me hard enough, you'll find me. It's not hard. I use the same nickname pretty much everywhere. But so in those spaces, it comes up pretty often, especially in person. And usually I let people assume that I'm Christian until they cross the line, because it's easier to start that conversation and ask questions as if I'm just a questioning Christian. And that's where those bridges start building, is let them assume that you're one of them, because most Christians automatically assume that you're Christian no matter what. You don't have to say anything. They just see, oh, white male, you're a Christian, clearly. And so that's how that usually goes, especially down here in the South. It's impossible that anyone wouldn't be a Christian. And so when I get in those situations, normally I start, asking questions, poking and prodding just a little bit. And eventually they realize, oh, you're not a Christian. And I go, well, no, I'm not. But we've been getting along fine up until this point, right? Like, we've been friends for years, so no reason to run away screaming yet. Let's keep talking about this. And I've maintained all of my friendships. There was actually one person at work who he and I got in many heated discussions, and we actually kind of like stopped being friends there for a little while. His choice, not mine. I maintained that I was here whenever he was ready to talk again, and we could go through whatever it was. And I pointed out that he was being very unchristian in the way that he was dealing with the situation. And eventually he came back and he apologized to me, and he said that he needed to work on himself, and he was hoping that we could be friends again. And since then, we've been absolutely fine. We don't talk about his religion nearly as much, but he was constantly trying to, play that gotcha game with me. But all the while, I was maintaining that, his views were valid for the most part, and I was explaining my views, and we were trying to find middle ground. And I was willing to talk to him as long as he was willing to talk to me, and that's really how it goes. I'll talk to anybody. I don't care. I'm a really easygoing guy, and so anybody who's willing to talk to me and not be disrespectful, I'll talk to you all day long. I don't care.
What if you're a Lokian?
Lokians also aren't people.
Oh boy, there goes our subscriber base.
Bye.
I've just unveiled the true Ulfer.
Bye, Lokians. See you later.
So I've had a bit of interesting experience in this area as far as trying to maintain friendships with Christians. On the one hand, they're my family, funnily enough, the parts of my family on my mother's side that have, for lack of a better word, anglicized themselves fairly heavily. Most of them don't actually have a problem with the fact that I'm a pagan, at least outwardly. Their issues have more to do with being my mother's child, quote unquote, and their concerns about that. However, one of my partners, his family has all but disowned him because he's a pagan, and because he's in a polyamorous relationship. His family was very dogmatic, hardcore Catholic. And there are, like, one of his brothers refuses to let him meet his niece and nephew because he sees him as, like, the absolute source of evil and thinks that he would be the worst influence ever. Whereas one of his other brothers has also kind of been disowned from their family because they talk to us. Him and his wife and their kids. So it was really, it's kind of interesting how mixed the reception has been, even in a place as progressive as my state. Cingeto, do you have any notes on that? On, like, attempting to maintain friendships with like, atheists or with Christians? All of my atheist friends pretty much are cool with the fact that I'm polytheist.
I have two brothers who are atheists. One of them doesn't really care about my religious beliefs. The other one thinks I'm just going through a phase. But I still generally get along with them decently well. My parents don't know. I'm not going to tell them for now. And then with other Christians, depends on them, but I usually get along with plenty of them just fine. We can generally agree to disagree. At least I think we are. Like, I get along with RCA and John Buck just fine. It just depends on the type. Some of them, if they don't badger me with anything, we're usually chilled with each other.
For me, is this where I talk?
Go ahead.
For me, usually either atheists will get me and come to understand me, and we can be friends within the first 10 minutes, or they're gonna hate my guts for the rest of eternity. That's how it tends to go.
I'm usually so diplomatic that I will work very hard to maintain that bridge. Ocean brings up good points about how any pagan that is entertaining or keeping company with Christians, that they're sacrificing part of themselves, and I'll agree with that. I hold back so that I can continue the conversation, because if I am honest with my beliefs and my feelings on their beliefs, it would shut the conversation down immediately, because they don't like confrontation. They only stick around because they feel like they may have a chance to convert you, and I only stick around because I'm trying to show that my beliefs are valid and they aren't able to break them down with anything that they say. And so every time that they try to poke a hole, I go, well, actually, that's not a problem for me because blank. You can't dismantle my belief system. However, I can show you how yours is incoherent. So if you want to ask me questions, I'm willing to answer them. You may not like my answers, so be forewarned. And that's usually how that conversation goes.
And then you challenge up the home gang.
Yes.
Well, and what's most interesting is, at least for me, I found that either dismissal or shunning seems to be more likely. And by dismissal, I mean either the idol argument or the imaginary argument or the demon argument from Christians seems more likely, whereas specifically fundamentalist atheists, as opposed to the more general like atheist crowd, tend to be a lot more combative and cruel. And again, this is just my personal experience, but I'm curious what you guys think, what your experience is. Again, I'm specifically labeling fundamentalist atheists here, not every single atheist that ever existed, because we have a lot of atheist friends between us.
Wait. What's an atheist?
I thought atheists were just a myth.
I did too. What's an atheist? What are these atheists? Atheistic.
I don't know, Calon, go check your Twitter feed.
Oh.
No. I'm not letting you get me with that. No.
Too late.
I already got you with it.
Burned.
Well, no, like, Calon deals with atheofundamentalists probably more than any of us do.
I don't know why.
anymore.
Yeah, Calon likes to seek out arguments. That is true.
I do not. They
Okay,
come to me.
Uh-huh.
I don't have to find them.
sure.
I'm starting to get him now because of that debate I did, though. There are a number of people I've gotten DMs from that didn't feel like Surus went after me the way that they had expected him to, which is strange because Surus is actively pals with a polytheist. But anyway, back to the question.
Oh, as for the question, that's right. So how do I deal with Atheo fundies? That was it, right?
No, the question, you admitted that atheists are not a myth. No, the question was, how does your experience with the way that Christians tend to deal with your beliefs differ from the way that atheofundies specifically do? Because we already know that there's a subset of atheists that are at least semi-accepting of us as people and think our beliefs are valid because personal experience.
With Christians, I'm told that I'm going to burn in hell for the rest of eternity. With atheists, I'm told that I'm a moron. With atheo fundamentalists, I'm told that I'm a moron and irrational and
Don't forget delusional.
Delusional too.
Yeah, usually you get delusions from the anti-theists.
Delusion and irrational are the two really popular ones. Mental illness from the really, really bad ones.
Yeah, mental illness. Sometimes a few transphobic slurs in there because somehow that's relevant. Still haven't figured that one out. So, yeah, different experiences, both just as bad. Really.
Dots, you can hear all of the dots. Ulfer is thinking. No, Wolf, what would you say your, like, the differing experiences between, like, atheo-fundamentalists and, Christians that already know that you're a pagan when you engage with them, as opposed to the ones that you know that you've tried to maintain relationships with?
With Christians, I've got a handful of Christian friends who know I'm pagan, and we have conversations. I've got a really close friend who I love the guy like a brother. If he called me up and he needed me, I'd head on over and I'd help him out however he needed me, because I know he'd do the same for me. He's a good guy. I work with him often. He's a really big help at work, and we get along great. We like a lot of the same things. We're into a lot of the same things, except for our religions.
Oh.
And so when it comes to speaking about religions, especially after he found out I was pagan, he got really worried for me. He let me know he was praying for me all the time. Like he became very worried for me. He wasn't angry at me. He wasn't rude, or at least he did not think he was being rude. I knew he was not acting out of bad faith. LOL at faith. But he was just trying to do what he thought he needed to do to save my soul. And I'm an extremely empathetic person, and I try not to fault Christians for doing that. As long as they're not being rude, and I can clearly read that they're literally just doing what they feel compelled to do to help me because they think that there's something wrong with me. I can't undo every Christian's line of thinking in that way. So I know that I'm just going to have to live with it while I work on validating paganism as a whole, which I won't be able to do on my own either. So with this particular case, he often is trying to find new ways to relabel my deities, relabel my experiences, try to point out how maybe it's not paganism, maybe it's just Christianity. And he's constantly trying to bring me back into the fold with little pokes and prods here and there.
How do you know that it's not my God answering your prayers just to try to bring you over so I can make this point? I've gotten that before.
Exactly. And he talks about the story of the Nephilim, where the angels and the humans had a love child. And
oh God, why do they do that? Why do they always bring up the Nephilim?
They want to relabel what they feel are lesser gods. They still hold that their God is the highest and most powerful, and that all of our gods are just angels or demons being relabeled and renamed, and that fallen angels or the Nephilim breed of entities are these, superhuman people or whatever that were just given names of Zeus or Thor or Odin or Persephone or whoever, just whoever that any of the polytheistic gods are just lesser super beings, but not gods.
Yeah, I've
Definitely not
encountered
gods.
those Christians before.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is, again, we've gone back to the Bible acknowledges the existence of other gods, but also, like, that argument is kind of silly given that God flooded the earth in the Bible specifically to get rid of the children of those things, so how could they have ascended to become deities? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
They couldn't have. I don't get that either.
Well, you see, God didn't eliminate them all, apparently.
Oh, well, that challenges his omnipotence, doesn't it? Because he didn't want them to exist. That's pretty damn clear in those verses, too.
Look, we don't go over the fine details. We just accept what's convenient, okay?
So, like, compare that, I guess, to your experience with the more fundamentalist atheists that you've run into. And for the folks in the chat that were talking about fundamentalism not being possible outside of religion, an alternate definition for fundamentalism in, like, the unabridged dictionary is the, like, obsessive strict adherence to basic principles of any subject or discipline, which in this case, the, idea of atheism, this, dogmatic, there are no gods, so you must agree with me, that is what we're calling atheofundamentalism here. These are atheists who effectively proselytize, as opposed to atheists who are just satisfied in not themselves not believing in a god.
More exactly, they tend to also adhere to a doctrine of verificationalism, which is the only acceptable evidence for like anything is science, which is a standard that doesn't work in the real world. Mainly because, well, for one, scientific evidence doesn't prove anything. You can have a high degree of certainty, for sure, but to say it proves is...
Well, that's why there's so few laws as opposed to theories.
It's the same with theories. You have different, like, you have, like, for example, a theory can be embedded, meaning it has a high percentage chance of being correct, but there's still always room for it to be wrong. And this is on purpose because because science is a self-correcting system.
Well, that's what I meant when I said that's why there's so few scientific laws as opposed to theories. Laws are the things that
even the laws that we do have.
Doubt.
Yeah. Even the laws that we do have are just based off of observation, like a law of gravity. Okay, I throw something up.
That's a theory now, remember?
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
The laws of motion, I think, are the only laws that still exist, but I may be wrong.
But anyhow, so, yeah, no, you can't... Yet holding verificationalism and that only scientific evidence is acceptable, it doesn't make any real sense, especially for, like, belief in independent agents. Like, what, are you going to command the independent agents to reveal themselves multiple times? No, it's just weird, if that makes sense.
We got a little bit off topic, though, because I was actually asking Wolf about the difference between his experiences with his, like, Christian friends or Christians that he comes into contact with versus, like, fundamentalist atheists that he has come into contact with.
So I gave my example with Christians. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really run into too many atheo-fundies. I mean... Maybe Iron in the chat would be kind of close. He's as politely as possible trying to tell all the polytheists that we're stupid. And so that's why I haven't really called them out until right now on stream. But I I mean, I don't really run into very many like fundamentalist atheists or anti-theists.
Okay, I'll fix that for you, Ulfer. Just give me
No, don't
Go
do
hop
that.
onto Calon's Twitter sometime.
No thanks. I have my own fires to attend to in the background. I don't want to do it in public as well.
Oh, they're not fires, they're infernos.
Right. But yeah, I mean, honestly, in my opinion, it's better to deal with people who at least will listen. I know you are, Iron. I'm just giving you shit. I was really kidding. I was kidding, I promise. But I don't really give atheofundies or, you know, anti-theists a whole lot of time because my time is extremely valuable and I don't believe that I'm going to be able to convince them. Maybe somebody like Ocean can, but I still doubt it. And there's something that I know I talk about Ocean a lot. He's my best friend and I've learned a lot from him. And one of the many things that I've learned from him is don't waste your time, especially with people
battles.
who won't listen to you. And so I've learned don't waste your time with people who aren't going to give you the respect or the credence or the credibility to what it is you're saying. And so I just don't talk to those people.
Cingeto, do you have any experiences you'd like to share? I know that you're not out as a polytheist like in your whole life.
I get the occasional on Twitter, but I'm usually not as how do I put it? I guess I don't get that many interactions on Twitter as much as I probably used to when I was more heavy-handed in the scene. But I would say the biggest parallel between them is both a relabeling of the experiences as either a delusion, a mental illness, or demons or such. That's the biggest parallel I can think between them.
That reminds me. So one thing I love to pull with Christians is that I actually believe in demons.
I mean, like, daimones are definitely a part of my faith too. They're just not the same.
Yeah, demons tend to be more locally based entities. Some are pretty powerful. They don't tend to be malevolent, but they also tend to have a more neutral attitude towards humanity. They don't tend to interact with you unless there's something you can do for them.
Yeah, whereas daimones, like, there are a couple of daimones that are considered to be malevolent, the spirits of punishment, as they're often called. But most of the daimones are like more like personifications of various concepts that you can interact with in order to deepen your understanding of that concept and therefore your like ability to be virtuous, if that makes sense. The Agatho daimon is the chief among them, so to speak. That's the house spirit that enables the interactions between humans and the gods. So, we're getting pretty close to wrap-up time. Do we have any sort of thoughts on the final thoughts on this? I know that I didn't really get to speak up all that much about my.
Do you wanna wrap us up, Aliakai? Because if I know you had a few things that you wanted to say. We've got time. You can definitely say what you need to say.
Well, the big thing that I wanted to talk about was getting involved in the debate sphere. I've dealt with a lot more sort of fundamentalists and Christians than
Right.
I'd have liked, especially because a lot of people didn't think I treated Cygart particularly fairly towards the end of our discussion.
They can think that all they want.
I tried to be nice for as long as I could.
You did.
But like coming back to all of this, I think that these alliances, both for, and I agree with Naka on this to a certain extent, I think alliances with folks who are on the same plane as far as, you know, particularly social justice is concerned, things like LGBTQ rights, things like, you know, dispelling racism, things like, you know, dealing with the plight of the poor, that these sorts of alliances with progressive-minded folks, you know, atheists and pagans were natural allies. Like, we are both persecuted religious minorities in hegemonic cultures, and
Yep.
ultimately, it shouldn't matter to either of us whether you believe in gods or not, so long as you're not trying to foist that onto other people via policy, right? You know, so long as you're not out to convert people and so long as you're not out to deny other people rights. And both of our groups tend to butt heads with the Abrahamic faiths for that reason. But I have a feeling that we would probably butt heads with another pagan organization if a pagan organization somehow seized power and, you know, like I'm going to say focused, and started trying to use that power to deny rights too. We would still be in alliance. Most pagans would not like that. So I think that these alliances are important, and I think that fostering them both between different pagan groups and with atheists, and potentially with some of the more progressive-minded Christians who aren't trying to use their faith to exclude other people or deny other people rights, the ones that think that their faith should be left out of politics. They're very, 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 very rare, but they do exist. I think these alliances are key toward getting anything done because we are such tiny groups. You know, paganism and atheism are both growing. Like, that's another thing that we have in common. Like, the Abrahamics are declining and we are growing. And that's a positive thing, I think. I think that there's a lot that we can learn from each other, and I think it's wonderful that we can work together. Also, welcome, Via, very, very late as we're starting to wrap up.
I'm sorry, I had plans.
It's fine.
You're not allowed to have plans, Via. No, I'm kidding.
By the way, do we want to talk about, I'll let you guys do your wrap-ups as well, but do we want to talk about at the end about moving this stream to a different time every Thursday, you know, because of Wolf? Because we had talked
Works for
about
me.
that.
You don't have to do it every Thursday, but any streams that you guys feel like having me on will have to be at this time. If I miss a stream and everybody else needs to be on earlier, it will not hurt my feelings at all. I'll hop on when I get off of work and hang out for a little while and then have to dip usually. But yeah.
What if I invite a Lokian?
Then I quit.
Functionally,
Actually, no.
actually...
Then I'll kick all of you off. I don't know how I'd handle that. I'd burn everything down.
Also, I was gonna have you
Which is
interview
probably
a
what the
Lokian.
Lokian would want. So now I don't know what to do.
So, functionally, I think that 9 p.m. EST, 6 p.m. PST works better for me, just because it gives me a little bit of time to visit my friend and stuff before I come on. And it also gives a little bit of wind-down time in case of a rough morning or something like that. So, I think that that actually would be a positive thing if our audience doesn't object. The only problem is we might be competing with Hammered Out, because they tend to run later.
I was just about to say, we might want to look at maybe moving the day, because Thursday nights at this time is Hammered Out, and we are absolutely competing with them right now, and I kind of felt bad about it. I'm over here bragging on my best friend, and he's doing his podcast somewhere else.
Yeah, but we all know that, like, Ocean and Cirrus's fans are the diehardest of fans and are either watching both at the same time or are just watching them, generally. Ocean is Sea Daddy, and he has the community love.
What, who, Ocean?
I mean, I would watch Hammered Out too if I could.
So, do we want to do, like, one of those extended poll type things on Twitter or somewhere else to see if there's another day that our audience would like to move it, or do we want to have a discussion ourselves?
We'll decide this for ourselves first on the and behind the scenes.
Yeah, let's nail down a couple days that we all 5 agree on, and then if we have more than one day available, we'll put it to the public.
Okay, I think that would
sounds
be a
good to
good
me.
discussion. So, date and time of this stream, this weekly stream, is going to be moving. We just don't know when yet. We will put out an announcement as soon as we know. Also, on the subject of announcements, Cingeto is actually working on a Samhain video, and that's going to be up sometime in the next, like, week or two. And Calon and I are going to be working on a series of responses to spirit science, because screw that guy.
And because Aliakai wants to torture me with Sumerian nonsense.
You know what? They did an episode on nutrition. I'm just as angry as you are.
You don't know the depths of my anger.
They called iron a macronutrient.
Iron is a macronutrient.
Oh my god, Calon. I'm going to
Yeah,
poke
that
you
sounds
in the
like
eye.
a macronutrient if you ask me.
I'm going to poke you
convinced.
both in the eyes with something hard and sandpapery
With
in
iron.
Minecraft.
You won't be able to. I
Yes,
take a lot of
iron-
macronutrient
Iron is
So
definitely
my eyes
a
are really
very,
tough.
very large molecule. Very much so.
Oh
Very
my
big.
God.
Iron isn't a molecule.
Oh my god, you guys are hurting my brain so bad. Don't troll me so
So
hard.
I take a lot of the macronutrient molecule iron, so you wouldn't be able to poke my eye. It's really hard.
So it did, because there would be an iron barrier. Anyway,
You got it.
that is absolutely fucking terrible.
It's an ocean
I don't
joke.
even remember what macronutrient is, but I know that iron is not it.
Iron's absolutely one of them. That's canon now.
All right, Cingeto,
All right.
that is another piece of merch that you're going to
Add
have
it to the list.
Iron is my favorite macronutrient.
You have to do a derp face for Wolf saying that. Like, this is now official.
Put his face on an iron molecule.
Oh my god, my brain.
Iron is my favorite molecule.
Well, Via, it's what fuels our trans blood.
Oh yeah, you're right. That's why I love it so much.
So
Exactly.
anyway, that series is going to be launching fairly soon. We're working on designing a proper frame and stuff for it so that it looks nice rather than just us sitting here in Zoom bantering back and forth.
The series is going to be called Aliakai Tortures Calon.
Most likely, yeah.
I mean, if they ever touch Greek mythology, which for all I know they already have, there's going to be some asses getting beaten.
Oh, they talk about how Zeus is the astral father of the fake moon.
I mean, to be fair, let's just go ahead and have Calon fly off into a rage. In their summary video on Sumerian mythology, they called Tiamat a Sumerian god.
Anyhow, I'm going to cancel the
I
stream.
don't know what any of this fucking means, you fucking crazy
Wolf just
heathen.
quietly drinking his water in the corner. Waiting for the explosion. So those are a few of the big things coming up in the channel. I'm actually curious for any folks who have topics that they would like for us to cover. If you want to either leave a message somewhere in the Discord tagging Calon and I, or Wolf, or Cingeto, or Via, let us know. Like, tag one of us and let us know. We are looking for more topics for these weekly streams so we can schedule them out a bit more ahead of time and let people know what we're going to be talking about. And we kind of want to know what the community's interested in.
Yeah, between the five of us, we cover a pretty broad range of topics, or
Pagan
also-
beliefs.
that we could talk about.
Christian.
So, and really, there's not a whole lot of limit on what we at least could talk about. One to the other four of us, and then we can all piggyback off of each other on that topic. So, yeah,
Just-
if you have anything that you guys want us to cover, please let us know. Discord, or I don't know if they can PM YouTube. I'm still trying to figure out YouTube
Contact us
myself.
on Twitter.
Yeah, post on Twitter, however you want to get in touch with us, let us know. And we would love to see those kinds of questions and topic suggestions for the future.
And
Like,
a
I
link-
know one series that I'm really excited about is Ulfer interviews a Lokian.
You know
just-
what? I'm just
Post
gonna
your,
convert to
post your
Lokianism.
video suggestions on Twitter, tagging us, and use the hashtag Calon your mic.
Just nothing, just make sure that if you do post a topic that it is something that we can talk about from multiple angles, so to speak. So, like, if you want to ask about Greek mythology or something, you can DM me directly, but if we're going to be discussing, say, the afterlife, that's something we can all weigh in on.
Absolutely.
So, in other words, totally send it to the wrong person.
The Sticks and Stonehenge Discord or the Discord link and the Twitter link should both be in the description of the video. So if you want to DM the Twitter account, also Calon has control over that. She'll be able to relay anything you send to it.
Yes.
So, do you guys have any parting thoughts that you would like to give on our particular topic? Via, I know you
Yeah,
didn't
slaughter
get to talk
the
at all.
atheists.
Oh God, no jokes like that, Via. Come on, be nice.
What?
Okay,
What did you say?
lightly torture all the atheists, please. Asking is a question,
Those
not
two
not
words
not
don't
as a
go
command.
together.
Lightly and torture, I don't think function.
You'd be surprised.
We can tickle them until they ask us nicely to stop.
Send them to the send them to the island of perpetual tickling.
Fuck you.
So,
So yeah, we should all drop our individual Twitter links, and then we can call it a night.
I believe they are actually all in the video description. If they're not, then the YouTube screwed up somewhere, or OBS did, one or the other, because I put them all there.
I haven't looked. I've just got the live stream and then the chat pulled up, so that's my view right now.
Yeah, it should have the group one, and it should have Calon's, mine, yours, Cingeto's, and Via's in there.
Well, that's just convenient, and I hate it.
I tried to be
Burn her the
thorough.
fuck down.
That said, I did remove the original Streamlabs link for PolyOlogy for the support the stream because we don't have that account anymore. Like, that account no longer exists because of the hacker. So we're working on getting a new OBS account for donations and stuff. We'll be getting that rolling sometime fairly soon. We just haven't gotten around to it because there have been lots and lots of things going on everywhere. So we'll get that going pretty soon. But like I said, all those things should be in the description. If they're not, then something fucked up somewhere and I need to go fix it. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And those of us who can are going to go head over to the after party for a little bit. I've got to go grocery shopping in less than a half an hour, so I'll be around for a short period of time. But thank you so much for joining us and talking about alliances and bridge building and such. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening.